Liberate IT is an Oracle NetSuite solution provider that has been servicing Australian and New Zealand companies since 2011.
Welcome everyone to the latest of our webinar series. Today it is Diagnosing NetSuite Performance with the Apm Tool. I am your host, Andrew Liniger. As always, great to have you with us. I am the relationship manager here at Liberate IT, so do reach out if you've got any needs around improving NetSuite performance or understanding what you have and what you like to do better. I'm all ears and can find the right resources for you here at Liberate IT to make that happen. Today, I'm going to go through a few NetSuite updates. There's a little bit to talk about today, which is kind of different and fun, so I'll be going through that. A couple updates from us. We'll then have Josh present the APM tool, and we'll wrap up at the top of the hour, the end of the hour. Some housekeeping today. Today's session is currently being recorded. If you miss anything or you'd like to watch it again because it's so exciting, feel free to check out our website or our YouTube page. And we'll post those this webinar there in about the end of the week. I think it's usually when we get that uploaded. Today, you'll see there's a Q&A function and chat. Please don't use the chat. Q&A just helps us monitor the questions as they come in and make sure that they're answered correctly. So we'll really encourage you to use that function. Okay, some NetSuite updates. SuiteWorld is returning to Las Vegas this year. It's on next month, the end of next month, September 27 to 30. Do let me know if you're planning on attending. I want to make sure that the NetSuite team are going to look after you while you're there. Fortunately, the team at Liberate aren't going this year, but with all that uncertainty about international travel, but we are definitely planning on being there next year. So keep an eye out for that. NetSuite 22.2 release is rolling out from August. I've got some dates for you. As always, NetSuite does things in 3 phases as the release is rolling out. The first phase is actually this month, 18 to 19 August. Most customers are included in phases 2 and 3. About a month before your update, you'll have access to the release preview account. We'll be going through this in our user event, but I would really encourage you to actually go in and log in and use that release preview and test your system end to end. Make sure that there's no surprises when your update does actually happen. The update happens overnight. Typically, the outage is less than an hour for everyone. The really large customers amongst you might be up to an hour, but generally it's less than that for everyone else. To get some more information about the new release, you can go onto your dashboard, pull through the new release portlet and everything you need to know there, including, hey, what's in it with the release notes and maybe an overview. That release preview login is also all access through here. If you're not sure how to get to the new release portlet on your dashboard, do contact our excellent support team and they will help you out with that. For us, you'll get all the details in the top right-hand corner of that release portlet. For us, we're going first, which is good. I'd rather go first than last, and so that we know what all the interesting challenges might be. And so if you're unsure when your release is happening, go and check that out. And that's where you can access all the right information. Okay, NetSuite have also released a couple of new modules available for purchase. I'll go through a couple of those. I just want to make you aware of those. It's very much an e-commerce focus at the moment. So there's a new feature called My Account. Some of you may already be allowing your customers to access your NetSuite through the customer portal. And while that's great, it is very much a NetSuite user experience. And so what the team at NetSuite wanted to do is give your customers I guess a modern interface and a modern look on how to do that. Some standouts for me is something like the reorder item. So if they're regularly ordering the same things from you, they are able to log in and do that themselves and obviously purchase those. If they've got any outstanding invoices, they're able to pay you for those as well. And of course, looking at the transaction histories and printing their statements and all the things that you would expect a customer portal to be able to do. You'll notice I've written there 10 days for activation. So it is a very much a locked in look and feel for my account. And the reason for that is to get it up and running very quickly within the business. So yes, we could potentially change the colors and of course put your logo on it, but the look and feel is locked in. And that just gives it some certainty in terms of our future updates and extra functionality, etc. The other feature is NetSuite Suite Commerce, what some of us call Suite Commerce Standard. Suite Commerce Advanced has been in the market for quite some time, and as a ground up website build can take quite a number of months to get there. The Suite Commerce standard approach is a very template driven. They've got 6 templates from which you can choose from, and those templates are pretty modern and modern looking. You'll see that we've got a 30 days for activation in there. So the idea behind this is there's no middleware, there's no integration that you need to worry about. It's all configured and maintained within NetSuite itself, which is cool. It is a B2B only, so if you've got a B2C need, this is not for you, but if you're transacting with your customers who are other companies or businesses, then this might be the one for you. So a couple of the different layouts are here, and would encourage you to reach out to me and let me know if this is something that you think you might be interested in. Of course, you might have just invested a whole bunch of money in a brand new website, but it doesn't actually have a shopping cart experience for your customers. This is a nice, quick and easy way to get that experience for to tack onto your existing website, so you're not losing that investment. So worth checking out. And there's the differences between Suite Commerce Advanced and standard Suite Commerce. So there's no version lock, which is great. It just updates just like your core NetSuite does, which is the main thing. Okay, the other thing I like to talk about in every one of these webinars is not only do we do webinars here at Liberate IT, but every customer that's purchased the company-wide Learning Cloud Support Pass, you also have access to the regular webinars that NetSuite do. They're more focused on NetSuite processes like accounts payable, accounts receivables, financials, and understanding of those. So, and obviously reporting, which we also do. So would encourage you, take advantage of those if you have access to that. They're good, they're short and snappy, an hour and a half to half an hour. Would really encourage you to check those out. Okay, so enough about NetSuite. From Liberate IT, because of the new release, that means that we're doing our user events. I've been with Liberate now for 2 years. This will be our first in-person user event for the last 2 years for obvious reasons. I'm really excited to being in Brisbane and Auckland coming up and get to see many of you face to face. So the invitations went out in last week's Info Hub. Please do register for those. Would love to see you there. Okay, that is it from me. Josh, you'll be pleased. Josh, Gordon, I'd love to know a little bit more about you, mate. You're obviously Liberate support team leader. Welcome, your first webinar. Bet you're pumped.
Yeah, it is. I'm excited, Andrew. Thank you. So I've probably met some of you I haven't got around to having the pleasure of meeting yet. I've been with Liberate nearly 2 months now, but I'm certainly not a stranger to Liberate IT. I'd been on the customer end like yourself for a number of years with several different organizations prior to now being on the support team. So I certainly know what it's like to be in your shoes. If you do have any issues with anything, don't be afraid to reach out to me. Chances are, in some instances, I've probably experienced the same frustrations and problems myself. Learnt the hard way how to resolve some of those, so you can learn from my experiences, hopefully. But yeah, we've got a great team here, and I'm really looking forward to being able to support you guys with your businesses moving forward and making the most and optimizing your NetSuite experience.
Awesome.
And
Thanks,
on that,
Josh.
yeah, on that, we're going to jump into the application performance management screen. So I'm just going to open up my presentation here for a moment. Alrighty. Oh. There we go. So that should be looking nice for you guys.
We've got a blank screen at the moment, mate. A blank Liberate screen. There we go. Overview. Got it. Looking good, Josh. You're a Zoom newbie, but doing great, man.
I am. All right. So, guys, you may have encountered the APM tool previously. You may not have. So we're going to look through from everything from the basics right through to some of the more advanced side of things. There is a lot to get through today. I'm going to try and keep it brief. Please do feel free to use that questions function, because no doubt you will have some. If we don't address all of those today, we will come back to you at a later point to work through some of that. But yeah, diving into it, this is the overview of what we're looking at. We're going to look at what the APM tool actually is, what it does. We're going to go through how to install it in your system if you don't already have it, and also uninstall an old, outdated version, which was a Suite bundle version. We're going to go through page by page, giving a breakdown of exactly what you're looking at, what it means, and then we're going to go through how to use the APM to quickly troubleshoot any performance issues. You know, what are the potential flags you're looking for, and what can you do about it? There is just one note I wanted to mention. Unlike most of our normal webinars, where we use sort of a live environment to show you what's happening, today I'm going to be using static screenshots. And that's just because to make the most of an APM experience, you need to have a lot of traffic happening. And obviously we don't have that happening in some of our demo accounts. So we're using some real live examples here. And just to protect any potential sensitive information, I've been selective in what we are displaying, and I don't want to show anything that you shouldn't be seeing. So that's just a little disclaimer before we go on. So first and foremost, what is the Application Performance Management SuiteApp? Other than being a bit of a mouthful, it's a very useful diagnostic tool. It gives you a platform to see insights to make the most of your NetSuite system. Within it, you can access a dashboard that we're going to look at potential issues and investigate them using the various tools that are included. You can see performance metrics for your most important records and pages. You can drill down quite heavily into detailed logs about records, types, operations, integrations, processing, all the really good stuff. You can also see your speed response times broken down across the various aspects of NetSuite, which I know a lot of you are going to be really interested in. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time looking into that and what we can do. You also get to look at your scripts, workflows, restlets, suitelets, Suite cloud processing. Basically the widest breadth you can imagine of what NetSuite is trying to process, we're going to get to delve into today. Again, another little note though is if you've recently switched data centers to a new Oracle Cloud infrastructure, which the Melbourne and Sydney data centers are both included in that, you will have to make you have to wait 30 days before your data is actually going to be refreshed to show you current usage in your APM tool. If you have recently shifted, yeah, just wait a month and then come back and you'll be able to see it all. It'll be flowing through brilliantly. So first and foremost, installing the APM tool. It's not a lot of help using it if it's not installed in your system. But basically what you're going to want to do is come here to your Suite Apps tab within your NetSuite main list of tabs. you're going to just search for APM within the search bar, nice and easy, and you will see two lovely little boxes, tiles. Now, what we're looking for is just the plain and simple application performance management one. Clicking on this is going to take you through to a more details page, the install icon. You click OK, you'll get a prompt asking if you're okay for updates. You want to say yes to that because that's the whole reason why they have switched from the Suite bundle to the Suite app, is to provide you an automatic updated platform for the APM tool. We're not going to be diving into this tile today, which is the APM for Suite Commerce. It's going to be outside of the scope. We're going to have more than enough to look at within here. And it's that simple. Once you have installed and it's done its little thing, you can find the Suite app by coming to Customization tab, and you'll see Performance here at the bottom. Now you've got a whole list of various pages. Again, we're going to look at these more in depth shortly, but we always recommend using the Performance Health dashboard as your default. So what you want to do is get in the habit of when you're coming to look at the APM, you come Customization, Performance Health dashboard. What you'll also see here is this Performance Suite Bundler. So this is the old version that I was just mentioning. What we're going to want to do is uninstall that. But for those that are interested in what the difference is, we've got this lovely table from NetSuite themselves. The short answer is not a whole lot. Basically, the old Suite bundle version is no longer being supported. They're not doing upgrades for it, updates, whereas the new Suite App Marketplace is obviously utilizing the new Suite App side of things. Does automatic updates. They changed a few names of some of the pages, and that's about it. So there's no need to have both versions. So then just moving through on how we're going to get rid of that old version. Again, if you come and have a look at customization and you can't see Performance Suite Bundler, just completely disregard what I'm saying here because it's not in your system. What you will need to do though is come Customization, Suite Bundler, search and install bundles. Now, those of you who are familiar with clicking on the list here will know that this brings you to a saved search that just gives you all the information on all the various Suite bundles that you've installed. Now, searching for application performance management within that, you will find a row that looks like this. You just want to click on the lovely man and cog on the side, click uninstall. Now, some of you may be feeling a little nervous that if you click uninstall, it's going to uninstall the new version. Rest assured that it doesn't. So this just relates to the old outdated version. Okay, so you will be able to uninstall that. It'll disappear here, so you won't be getting confused, and you'll just hopefully have the lovely performance new version of the APM. Now, sorry, the one thing I have missed, it is important to note that as a default, only administrators are able to access the APM tool from within the Performance tab here. We can change that, and I will show you how to do that right at the very end. But if you are logged in a standard sort of user role, you won't be able to see the performance. You do need to be set up as an administrator. So diving right into the deep end, as I mentioned at the beginning, the performance dashboard is our point to start with the APM tool. What we get is we get 5 lovely tiles of the 5 areas that we are going to be looking at, and there are multiple pages, multiple prompts within each of those that we will also be looking at. It's fairly self-explanatory what we're looking at. We're looking at record pages, scripts, saved searches, integrations to NetSuite, and then processing things as well. Now, within each of those, you'll see that there's several different issues that it's highlighting. So you've got performance issues. Now, those are going to be relating normally to either timeouts or slow response times, high average wait times, that sort of scenario. Errors, on the other hand, again, a bit self-explanatory. It's related to when something is broken that you need to fix. So those are major ones that want your attention. Standards updates. relates to things that need to be updated to make the most out of your NetSuite capabilities. So it's more like an optimization flag saying, hey, we've noticed that something is out of date here. You really want to do something to address this issue. Now, clicking on one of these tiles is going to bring up a list of the performance issues. To start with, they're all going to be like this lovely line here that I'm pointing out. You're not seeing a whole lot of information. Clicking on the plus will expand that to show you a little bit further. But what you do want to know is, so here we're looking at the record pages tab. We can see that it's saying there's high median response times for invoice edits, quote edits, and invoice saves, and what those values are. Now, again, there's nothing we can really do from this page other than sit there and say, right, here's what I want to investigate further, which is what this investigate button does. So clicking that is going to take you to the subsequent page that we're going to look at and provide you more information. But before we go there, just talk about the snooze button. That is going to remove the alert for 30 days. It will group them on the tile to tell you that you have got snoozed alerts hiding there. This is for administrators that say access the performance dashboard on a weekly basis. You can sit there and snooze things that you say you already are aware of as an issue. You've already set something in motion to deal with it, but obviously NetSuite will still be reporting on the data if that hasn't been resolved. So it's just a way to sort of clean up and make sure that when you come to this dashboard, you're seeing only what you need to see to action. All right, so first of all, we're going to be looking at these record pages. So the first tool or page within the record pages is the record pages monitor. Now, think of this as like a sub dashboard. So this is looking at every record instance within NetSuite. Now, you can segment this a variety of ways. So this is going to be fairly common as we work through these pages. There's three main ways. You've got most utilized, most users, and highest response time. So that's going to determine what you see when you run this page. If you have come from a previous page using Investigate, it's going to skip all this and take you straight to the details. But this might be if you're just wanting to do some manual investigation yourself. So once you've decided what pages you want to see with this tab, you're going to then pick the time frame that you want to look at. There's a whole bunch in this drop-down menu. I would suggest limiting yourself to last 24 hours if you're looking at something immediate, 1 week if you're just doing a standard look, or if you want to see your biggest amount of data, 30 days. You know, or else it's just you ending up playing around for ages with the different settings. So once you've decided that there, we're going to come and have a look at what the results will look like. You're going to get 10 tiles like this based on how you set it up. So if it's most users, it will be the 10 tiles with the highest number of users as shown here. If it's most utilized, it's going to be the 10 records that have the highest amount of runs in the past period. Or if it's the highest response time, which is probably what most of you are going to be interested in, it's going to be the 10 highest response times. So fairly straightforward. What you're going to see is the record type and then the record operation. So for every record type, so type, think things like customer, vendor, item, payment, bill, screen, basically any record page within NetSuite. And then within that, you've got its various operations. So whether it's create, edit, save, or view. And each of those is going to have a slightly different tile with a different response rate and different statistics. You then get this lovely graph, which isn't really helpful for diagnosing anything, but it certainly makes it look like a nice little pretty picture. You can see some of the outliers here. This is just referring to the response time versus time of when it has been accessed. So clicking on one of these tiles, again, sorry, before we move on, you're going to be able to sit there and make a business decision about whether this is really a huge issue here. So obviously something to look for when troubleshooting on here, the response time in relation to the users and the amount of utilization. If you have a really obscure record that is just used by one user in the business, and say it's used 5 times every 30 days, you may sit there and say, hey, it doesn't matter if that takes 20 seconds to load. But the cost associated with troubleshooting and resolving that and the time probably isn't worth it. But if you were to sit there and have, like here, a customer save record that is being utilized thousands of times in the given period by a large number of users, if that had a response time of, say, 20 seconds, that is well worth investigating. That's the kind of flags we're looking for here. Is that response time in relation to the amount of users and utilization. So clicking on one of those, you're going to get some graphs that will break this down a little bit further. What we get first of all is this response time graph. Now we're going to go further into looking what these different colors mean in terms of client, network, and service, because that's going to be the main area of where and how we can troubleshoot resolving speed issues. But for now, just looking at these graphs, the top pinnacle point is obviously the overall response time. You can see we've got a couple of outliers here, but on average, it's sitting around 7 seconds. Now, I would still say that's rather slow for just viewing a sales order. So we're going to want to delve into this a little more. We can see that the network is taking relatively short time, and the client and server about a 50-50 split in terms of the time it's taking to access that record. The great thing about these 3 graphs here is they are all interrelated. So you'll notice hovering over a particular point, you're going to get these lovely little summary tables pop up on every single graph, just so you can quickly compare. Now throughput here is going to be giving you the number of record instances and the number of users over a period. This is important to the context, excuse me, because if you're looking at a high response rate, it may be because you've got a large number of users and people trying to access it at once. But that's going to make sense when there's a lot of traffic on the road, there's a traffic jam. But doesn't look like that is the case for our high outlier here, so we may want to examine that further. We've also got the user event and workflow chart, which is sitting there and looking at user run event scripts and workflows in relation to that page. So this is going to help you identify if the long response time is due to customization that you have. So for some of you who are running heavy customizations and heavy scripting, we would be able to sit there and see, oh, yes, our execution time is actually in line with all our customization, which is causing that high response time. Now, that's not to say that we can't resolve that. It may be that, hey, we can look at some efficiencies to make that run smoother, but it just helps you see that where and what is causing the long response. You've also then got this lovely quick look execution time distribution graph. Now, what we are looking for here is a lovely bell curve shape. This here is an example of where we want to investigate. We've got it skewed hard right, showing that actually the majority of the times we access this record with this instance of view, it's taking longer than we would expect it to. So we have decided, looking at this, that we want to investigate further. Clicking on any one of these points is going to take us through to the next page, which is where we come from clicking on the investigation tab back on the performance dashboard. So if we just go back, so here's the investigate. If we were to click straight on that, we're going to get taken through to our page time summary. Okay, now page time summary, it's got a lot of the similar lingo to what's on the previous pages, but it's really broken things down nicely. So here's these same stats: record type, operation, number of logs, and users. So we can see straight away this is definitely a business critical investigation that we want to look at in terms of our long, here we go, mean or average 13 seconds with a median of 8 for that page to load. That means every time someone is saving a sales order, they are waiting on average 13 seconds for that page to clear. So you can start to see if you're having speed issues within NetSuite, these are the pages within the performance summary you want to look at. Now, this is broken down further into each of these, which we mentioned on the previous page, but I'm going to just explain what each of these mean and how to troubleshoot sort of each one further now. Just before we do, though, those of you that keen mathematics will notice that 13.3 is not the total of all of these. Now, that is because these are averages of that particular response, and the total is the average of all the total responses rather than the total of this particular row. So sometimes you may see slight little mathematical things that you go, that's not quite working out. That is why. The other thing is sometimes these suite scripts and workflows may also be happening at a server side. So there may be some correlation and crossover between those two timeframes. But basically what we're looking at first is the client. Now, client refers to your NetSuite system, okay? So anything to do with your computer, your browser, network, and NetSuite as a whole. Network is to do with the ISP, so your internet service provider. If you were to see a long response time here, chances are you're not just feeling it on NetSuite, you're going to be feeling it whether you're searching stuff or YouTube, your Gmail, it's a general internet slowness from your perspective. Suite script is looking at the amount of time it took all the scripts to run. Scripts being your custom scripting that we've got in the background for you. And then workflows is similar, but just looking at workflows. So we can tell here from the looks of things, there is not a whole lot going from a workflow perspective when we save a sales order. The server side, though, that is referring to NetSuite and the NetSuite data center server. So this time here refers to the page load time for data to travel from your NetSuite to the NetSuite server, it to process. So if you think client is me, network is the ISP, this is my customization, and this is NetSuite. And that's basically going to give you the idea of where you want to pinpoint your investigation. In this instance, we're looking, it's clearly a server response. So something is happening at NetSuite's end that we're going to want to investigate. But just before we get how to do that, moving down, you've got this detail log. Now, this is every single instance or all 1,325 times the response rates for each one of those. You can also see in this address field what the user who was logged in. So you may be able to troubleshoot and see, oh, it's only one particular user that is having speed issues. Again, really handy. You can CSV export this if you've got if you're wanting to send the data through to us. Which again, if you are wanting assistance with troubleshooting speed related data, this here screen with the export log is what you're wanting to screenshot and supply. And again, the more you can, the more records you can provide that for, the more data, the bigger the time frame, the better it is for us finding trends and issues there to assist with a resolution. But there is some stuff that you can do. So firstly, if you were to see, which it's not in this instance, but if the client speed was the issue, first and foremost, you want to have a look at your specific PC. Things like RAM can actually have an effect. So if you're running an older, slower PC or Mac, and you've got 50 tabs open of NetSuite, that's going to cause you an issue. So restarting your computer can sometimes help, making sure you don't have a whole bunch of tabs open. There's also other things like your firewall settings may potentially be restricting NetSuite and causing a delay in that page refreshing. You can do things like create rules to allow traffic from netsuite.com within your firewall, which would prevent it from adding latency. You may find it's your specific browser that's having an issue. We prefer to use Google Chrome. We find that's certainly, from our experience, one of the best browsers to use. Not to say you can't use NetSuite within the others. And there's things like browser caching that you'll find all sorts of stuff on the internet suggesting clear your browser cache, and that might help reduce the delays. Just on that though, it is important to note that if you do clear a cache, the first time you load something, it will be remarkably slower. And that's just to do with the way that the computer is storing data to access it in the future. So we recommend if you do load that same page or do that same operation 3 or 4 times, and by then you should get back to normal speeds that you'll be able to analyze, has there been an improvement? All right, now NetSuite network speeds, I've already talked about. That's to do with your ISP. So the easiest way to troubleshoot that is to see, look, hey, if I access other websites, is it slow? To resolve that, you will have to talk to your internet service provider though. Suite script and workflow issues. Now that's going to be customizations. You can see over on this side here a script and workflow breakdown. So it's going to show you what sort of things are running in the background. Again, there's another log there that you can extract. Basically, if the high response time is contributed to here, you may want to look at this log and experiment with turning off some of those workflows or scripts, if you're confident to do so, within a sandbox to see if that helps confirm that that is the speed issue. You know, here at Liberate IT, if you do find that that is an issue, we can help work through potentially optimizing some of those to get your system running efficiently. It's not always the case, depending on, again, the sort of data it's needing to pull, but we'd certainly love to help if you find that's an issue. And lastly, the issue of the server, which is what's in this instance. Now, there's not a whole lot that we can actually do about this to resolve it immediately because it sits in the NetSuite server side. But what we do want to do, first of all, is to check the NetSuite's data center status. For those of you that aren't familiar, you could go to status.netsuite.com. So that's status.netsuite.com, and you'll be able to view your particular data center and see if there is any acknowledged issues there that might be causing that a hiccup temporarily. Otherwise, if you find that the number of logs and users are low, the NetSuite server does suffer from that same first load caching problem that we could experience at a client level. So if that's low, that might be a reason. But here where we've got a large number of logs, we can see they're happening, you know, every 5 minutes we're accessing that page. That to me is something that we need to file a fault with NetSuite to say, hey, we're having an unexpected over-the-top response rate. So if you want assistance with that, like I say, screenshot, send it through to me. I'll do that and get a resolution from NetSuite side as soon as we can. And finally, with the page time or page records pages within the dashboard here, the last one we've got is the page time details. We're not going to look at this today. It's more of a advanced troubleshooting for developers. You have to know the explicit operation ID, and what you're looking at on this page is the exact script or plugin and how it relates to a specific page. So it's very, very precise. And again, sort of outside of the scope of what we're wanting today, but just wanted to mention it so you know it's sort of there. And that brings us to the first tile done. Now, those of you that are worried that I'm going to take 20 minutes to go through all the others, that is the largest chunk and probably the largest, you'll spend the most time within the record pages when you're troubleshooting, because quite often it is all speed related. So certainly these next few tiles aren't going to take that long. We're going to rip through them, but yeah, that's where we're up to. So moving on to the next one, we're going to take a look at the Scripps tile. Now again, you can look at what it's going to be highlighting here is high error processing rates, or the standards update will refer to scripts that are having major issues with deploying. Now, I apologize for the granularity of this particular graph here. Again, this is probably not something that we're going to run very often. What it looks at is a specific script and how it runs overall in your NetSuite. So page time details looked at a specific script as it relates to a page. This looks at a specific script within your NetSuite system as a whole. Again, you're going to have to know exactly what type and name of script you're looking for. So this is more of a development tool again, and then you've just got your date filters. Again, you can see over this side, hopefully you've got number of logs and users, you've got things like total times, and most importantly, you've got logs. But again, this is probably more utilized by developers in looking at how their suite scripts are performing in the system. And we've done that one. Now, that's the nice, easiest one, so they won't all be that short either. But we'll move on to our saved searches next, and see how they're going. We're going to be looking just at, the dashboard will just be highlighting here for us slow or unusual processing times, or those saved searches that have regular timeouts. So that's sort of really handy to have a look at. So this is sort of the demo of what the page looks like. Again, getting sort of very familiar with this sort of tile. Okay, that's really key to utilizing the APM tool. It's got your name at the top, what you're looking at. So there's the saved search and what type of saved search it is. You've got your sort of time KPIs there, the average and median, the timeout rate, and then again, the business impact it's having, how many times it's utilized and the amount of users, and then a lovely little graph. So we can see, for example, just looking briefly at the graph, this one's running quite regularly all the time. This one seems to be running quite heavily at whatever time period that is. So again, you're just sort of looking at what you've got here based off your segmentation. So at the moment, the screen is looking at the most requested. So that's going to be this number here. Saved searches. You can also change that to used by most user, which would be here, or the highest response time. Now, clicking on one of these tiles is going to take you through to the saved search details page. This is going to be the same page that clicking on the investigate button will take you to. And it's just a lovely, again, similar sort of feel to that record page details page, but slightly different data being displayed. We've got all the really key things we need to use at the moment. There's our requests and number of users again to show sort of what the impact of this is, and our sort of key time KPIs there. Now we've got 4 graphs, so I'm just going to quickly go through. So you've got your execution time graph. That is, again, it's aptly named, looking at the amount of time that it's taking for the script to run, saved search to run. You can see for some reason that when we run this at lunchtime, there is a major sort of issue with it taking a whole lot longer. So that would be worth sort of investigating. Why are we finding that during the day it takes next to nothing, and then suddenly it's taking this massive chunk between 12 and 2? We can see that on the requests page, that we're definitely running that search fairly regularly and consistently throughout the day. So there must be some other reason that's causing this long response time. This is also really handy to show us, hey, the search was completed, it timed out, or it failed. And then you can see over in this side in the context, what caused that saved search to run. So was it run by a user? Was it run by a workflow or a suite script? And then again here, same graph as what we looked at previously in execution time distribution. Though bear in mind that in this instance, the execution time down the bottom of our graph will expand, whereas on the record pages, it's set to strictly 7 seconds. So we do have a much nicer looking sort of bell curve shape here. And that's saved searches. Oh, thanks. I think Andrew's picked up that question there, guys. So just regarding the next page we're going to be looking at integration. So this is, again, is probably going to be key after record pages, about looking at the external things that are talking with our NetSuite, and if there's any errors, if it's picked up any performance issues, or if there's any integrations using unsupported things that'll be causing you slowness or lag. And also it's going to be looking at concurrency. So the first 2 pages that you'll see within here, we've got, sorry, jumping back, SOAP web services and REST web services. Now, this is just to do with your particular APIs that are talking with NetSuite. You're looking at the same sort of data, but it's going to be displayed slightly differently, dependent on whether you're using a REST or a SOAP type API. Again, this data is primarily going to be used to provide information to developers to make fixes. And yeah, so we'll jump into it. Your SOAP dashboard, again, it feels like I've just cut and pasted the same dashboard every time, which is really great because you get familiar with what you're sort of looking at here. So you can see the amount of requests and what's happening in this execution time, the amount of times. Again, we can see that for some reason, the add list function of the API seems to be taking longer. Now, that might be all within normal. I wouldn't know, I'm not an API developer. But again, it's giving us that information to look at and investigate further. The request side, I do find really helpful. And this is going to be giving you some key red flags for further investigation. So firstly, what you want to look for is rejected user concurrency, and secondly, failed. That's going to be some stuff where we go, hey, that's a red flag we want to look at. And I'll go into what that sort of all means in a little moment. Again, error rate, it's giving us a breakdown just of the errors. So, excuse me, you can see here, add list is definitely taking the longest execution time, and it's having the longest errors. So of all our errors, 10% of them are related to add list. And then again, looking at the amount of, it's a records by time per minute versus total records. This is giving you a breakdown of what and how and when the data is all transferring backwards and forwards. If we look at our REST dashboard though, slightly different perspective or view. Very similar though, we've got these same tiles, but where our SOAP was displaying update, add, get, etc., delete, all on the same graph, we have to click on each individual tile to see that. This can be really helpful though. Again, we're seeing execution times. This, we want to be looking for any peaks and troughs to work out why is that suddenly having a major execution time lag from going at just a fraction of a second to suddenly going up to 100 seconds. That's something we're going to want to investigate further with our API developers. Again, we can see the fails versus the finished, and we can see the percent of requests and the error rates down the bottom against time, which is handy. The other thing too, all of these clicking on a particular point, you can see we've got that same functionality, the 3 graphs highlighting, and clicking on those is going to take you through to the log. So the log, again, key thing here, if the one thing you get out of today's thing, learn to screenshot and export via CSV. Someone else can actually do the fixing, but at least you know where to get the data to help get those resolutions quickly. You don't necessarily need to know how to make the resolution, but at least you can provide the right data so we can get going and get things back up and running to their maximum efficiencies. So see in the log here, we can see exactly what was happening in terms of the API. Again, a lot of this is going to mean not a lot to you and I, but to a developer, it's going to be really helpful. We can see what failed, what finished, its execution time, the exact time. So yeah, really helpful stuff in there. And then we mentioned talking about concurrency, which is important for both this and the next one. So we've got a specific concurrency overview, which is going to be looking at your web and RESTlet integrations and basically measuring the traffic flow. Now, there's going to be 2 different views, but I'll talk about that more on the next page in the context of our concurrency overview page. You can see here is that unallocated limit view and the allocated limit view. We're going to be looking at both of those. What you do need to know, if you're not familiar with the phrase concurrency, it is referring to the amount of traffic happening at a particular time. The best way to think of it is if you have a multi-laned highway, the amount of lanes on our highway is our concurrency limit, okay? The amount of instances of what's happening at a given time is like the amount of cars we're trying to cram side by side. Now, obviously, if you've got a 5-lane highway, you only really want 5 cars at maximum. You might be able to, at a pinch, get 6 side by side before you have an accident. And that's the best way to think about this. So we are saying here that we have 31 lanes, and at some point we tried to cram 98 cars side by side on our road, and understandably we caused an accident and it turned into a mess. Now, allocated limit would be like expanding on that analogy and saying we're going to put a bus lane in. So you can sit there and say, this specific integration, I want to have a dedicated processing lane. So only the bus can go down there. Now, that does mean that you have less lanes for all your normal traffic, but should that key business critical integration need to happen, you can guarantee that it's going to be able to go through smoothly. So that's sort of that difference there. Again, we've got these lovely sort of flag areas. We can see our error rate. We can see the amount of requests that we're putting that are over our concurrency limit. So the amount of times we've tried to cram 7 or more cars on our 6-lane highway. You've also got the amount of times that we had near misses. And then you've got the heat map here that is actually giving a detailed breakdown of that data. So you can see it's by time, by date, and it's hour chunks. So where you see blues, that's all okay. That's saying, hey, we're operating fine. There were no errors. We were within our concurrency limit. Where you see orange, it is saying, oh, we squeezed in a couple of extra cars on the lanes. We went over our concurrency limit, but we didn't have an accident. There were no fails. Red, on the other hand, is saying, you tried to cram way too much all at once, and we caused fails. Now, that's not to say that the data hasn't actually eventually flowed through, but it does mean that we're going to be causing performance issues with that. Now, clicking on any one of these little boxes, you'll get taken to the next screen, which is going to provide some more details. So here we can see the true picture of what was happening. So in here, it looks like for the whole hour, we were trying to plug through too much data from 10 to 11. When we come to the details screen, you're going to see actually it was just for 2 minutes, which is good because troubleshooting that, we can sit there and say, let's find out what did that and can we space that out somewhat across the other areas? Because most of that hour, we're only using between 10 and 15 of our 31 concurrency. Now, you might be going, well, how do I do that? I'm glad you asked. Click, click, click. If in doubt, click, and it will keep deep diving you into the next detail page within the APM tool. So we would click on any of these, on the red parts particularly, to start with, to get taken to the log page. And the log is going to show us exactly what was happening in that particular time frame. Again, you can extract these. So if in doubt, hit extract and take it to a CSV file. But specifically here, we can see rejected account concurrency. So it was just this particular line at 10:45. We can tell that our point of sale integration is trying to process too much information. So that gives us, again, we might not be able to fix that here, but we can then go to the point of sale integration and say, why are you trying to send so much information all at once? And try to space that out, get rid of that peak and put it into some of those troughs earlier. And that's the integrations. We're nearing the end, guys. You're nearly there. we're going to be looking at the processes side of things now, which is the last component. This is looking at SuiteCloud and the processes and scripts and jobs that it is, I guess, implementing on your behalf. Now, it won't show you insight into every script it's running, only the significant ones based off runtime. And you do need to watch out before editing any settings within this. So when you go to the SuiteCloud processes, you'll get taken to this screen. You'll see the processor settings. As a default, most of these will be set to 0 on here and disabled. Now that's the default. You can change that, but unless you know what you're doing, it's a dangerous ground to walk on. You can cause more harm than potential good if you get it wrong. The other thing to note is the total number of processes here, which is an important figure to have. And then similar to what we've already seen, you can see the processor utilization. Now, if our concurrency was measuring the amount of cars side by side trying to travel at once, this is measuring how fast those cars are, how big and heavy the trucks are. This is how much is NetSuite having to work to process this kind of the kind of jobs you've got. So it doesn't care whether it's one job at once or 5 jobs. How complicated was the job we were asking it? Now, again, we've got some information here we'll go over. Just to mention, there's that lovely CSV extract button that's really important. You've got your deployment and your script name. So that is the what. What are we looking at here? Again, the type of script, that won't mean much to you and I other than knowing that often MapReduced is simpler tasks, scheduled is sort of logic that has to follow one another. It can't be interrupted or broken down. That's an oversimplified version. You've got your stats on what happened, the completed and the failed and the how long it took. Now, what you're going to notice here that we haven't seen before is a wait time. Okay, so NetSuite cloud processes will put your jobs into a wait queue if it's unable to do it straight away. And so that's what we're looking at to maximize here. How can we reduce the waiting time to make the most out of our SuiteCloud processes? Again, minimize the peaks and shift those to the trough areas. You do also have a priority status. Again, as a default, this is not turned on. So when we look at our next page, you will see our first graph is showing us the scripts by priority status. This is going to look really boring for most of us because as a standard rule, we only utilize standard. But again, you can sit there and say, this particular deployment is essential. I want it to be a high priority, and your SuiteCloud processes will revert to doing that first before the others. So theoretically, what you want to see here is a minimal wait time for high, a medium for standard, and the lows can be wherever we want because we've determined they're not business critical. You can also see the amount of jobs. So although our wait times are fluctuating, you can see that the jobs that we're asking it to do are fairly standard until we hit 7 in the morning. And suddenly we've got this huge peak on the wait time because we're asking it to do a lot of jobs all at once. So that's the kind of thing, again, we've got this trough at 8 a.m. Can we shift some of that so that NetSuite's processes aren't working so hard between 7 and 8, and they're doing some of that heavy lifting at 8 a.m. to sort of level that out again. Oh, sorry, next screen. Our processor utilization. So again, here we're looking for if this is nearing the top, we're in trouble and we probably need to contact Andrew to buy some more processing power for our SuiteCloud. As fairly standard, you can see that there's not a lot of heavy lifting happening between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m. So that's just sort of the thing to look for. But the interesting thing to note here, this is the same graph from above. Although there's not a lot of heavy lifting happening, we are actually still sending through a fairly standard number of jobs. And coming back to that 7 a.m. peak, we can see there are a lot of jobs, but again, it's not heavy lifting. So we're actually just overwhelming based on quantity, the sheer number of jobs. that we're asking it to do it once. So that's what you're looking at on that screen. And then finally, you've got processor concurrency. So very similar again to the previous analogy. Are we utilizing all our processors? Are we stressing them out by asking them to do too many jobs all at once on our, cramming 6 cars into our 4-lane highway? And then finally, a breakdown of the wait times in terms of the processors. So the overall time sitting in a queue versus the overall time executing. And finally, the last page we've got, we're nearly there, is the insights into specific developments at specific times. Similar again, more of a development tool. You've got to know exactly what you're looking for. And you and I probably won't do a whole lot with this. Developers absolutely love it. And that takes us to almost the end, but that is that dashboard. So again, the dashboard is a great place to start. Get familiar with what, and we'll go over this in a summary shortly, what each of these looks like. And the pages here do all relate to these tiles. They just help you step if you wanted to immediately jump into the details rather than go through the whole process, you can do so. Then finally, the APM setup. So as I mentioned, you've got to be an administrator to access the APM tool to start with, but you can change this. Clicking on the APM setup, you can set specific roles. Say you have IT manager that you want to be able to look at this, or an IT consultant role. You can stick that there, or a specific employee. If you have NetSuite champions within your organization, which we always encourage, you can set that under the employees tab so that they can access this, and you don't have to worry about anyone else that shares the same role to them having access. And look, so thank you for your time, guys. That is the APM tool. I realize it's been long. There's been a lot of data to go through, but just some of the summary there for you. Use the performance dashboard to assist with direction if you don't know where you're looking. Then determine where the issue is that you want to deal with. Is it overall speed? Try the record pages monitor. If it's data not flowing, try the SOAP and REST and concurrency monitors. As a general pointer, utilize the monitor or summary pages for overall troubleshooting. If it's a log or detail page, it's going to give you that real granular level. And if in doubt, screenshot, export those CSVs, send a ticket through to me, and I'll be more than happy to help.
That's great, Josh. Thanks so much, mate. I really appreciate it. We've got time for Q&A. I realize we've gone a little bit over, but I thought I might read the first question out that we had during the session, and that is, on the performance health dashboard, can they change the time at which it's analyzing the information?
No, unfortunately not. So performance health dashboard is the one screen where you don't have that ability. So it is locked into a 7-day overview. Got you.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much, Josh. Lucky I didn't answer that one. I would have answered that incorrectly. I guess I've got a comment. It just looks like, NetSuite under the hood is quite complex. There's a lot of information there. It looks like NetSuite have tried hard to simplify drilling down to the piece of information that you need. I would imagine that also a bunch of people joining today are NetSuite administrators, and they will get feedback from the business saying, hey, my NetSuite is slow. And that's the extent of the feedback that they get. So being able to drill down to say, oh, was it the customer screen as opposed to creating an invoice, and is it just them, and are they doing something weird in NetSuite? Like having that data really helps for you to set the context and go, actually, this is really worth chasing up NetSuite because this is slow for everybody, as opposed to one person.
We hope this video gave you the information you were after. If you have any further questions, get in touch with us using the links in the description.